What is up, guys? Delboy here. Just a quick video about the MAIRIS BRIEDIS versus Marco HUCK fight. This fight takes place this weekend in Germany, and it's now going to be for the vacant WBC Cruiserweight title, formerly held by Tony Bellew. And I believe, according to reports online, that Tony Bellew is actually now the champion emeritus in the WBC, which essentially means that he can come back and fight for that title anytime he wants. What did Tony Bellew do to be the champion emeritus? You'll have to tell me, but it is what it is. But regardless of that, this fight is going to be for the WBC Cruiserweight title, and I think that's a good look. It makes the fight that little bit more interesting and mouth-watering, and it adds a little bit more prestige to the fight, which was already a very good fight in the first place. MAIRIS BRIEDIS and Marco HUCK, to me, are two top 10 cruiserweights, and stylistically this is a really interesting clash. So let's look at both fighters. Marco HUCK, he's almost become a bit of a stalwart in the cruiserweight division over the last 10 years or so. He comes into this fight with a record of 40 wins, 3 defeats, 1 draw, 27 of those 40 wins coming by way of knockout. Whereas MAIRIS BRIEDIS comes into this fight with a record of 21 wins, 0 defeats, 0 draws, and 18 of those 21 wins coming by way of knockout. So obviously Marco HUCK is the more experienced fighter. He's been in with much better competition over the years. He's fought guys like Ola Afolabi, Denis Lebedev, Fira Arslan, Glowacki, Alexander Povetkin, Hugo Garay. He's fought all these guys. He's fought Steve Cunningham. Marco HUCK has fought a good level of competition at cruiserweight, and he's had multiple world title fights. He equalled Johnny Nelson's cruiserweight record of title defences, which I believe was 13, I want to say. So Marco HUCK has been a top guy at cruiserweight for really a decade now. So yeah, I mean, he's going into this fight with much more experience. MAIRIS BRIEDIS comes into this fight being a fresher guy, obviously. They're actually the same age. They're both 32 years old, but BRIEDIS hasn't had as long as a career. He's not been in many wars. He's only really been in one sort of semi-tough fight against Deridola, but apart from that, he's never really been in any sort of wars. So you'd imagine that MAIRIS BRIEDIS is the fresher guy here. And stylistically, I think this fight's really interesting too, because I think let's start with Marco HUCK. Marco HUCK's a guy who sometimes when you watch him fight, you think to yourself, what a caveman. This guy's got no skills at all. And technically, he's not great. But one thing about Marco HUCK that is extremely underrated is his ability to offset his opponent's rhythm with his own sort of weird, sort of almost caveman-like style. Watch Marco HUCK fights, like for example the second Fira Arslan fight, or even the Afolabi fights. In stages, there are stages there where Afolabi never really had much success, particularly in the last 2 fights. He's got a weird style that's hard to really sort of build a rhythm against, because he's so unorthodox, because he throws shots at weird angles, and because he's got some dirty tricks as well. It's hard to fight at a consistent rhythm against Marco HUCK, and I think he's underrated in that sense. And also, he's got a good knack of stealing rounds, which is a veteran tactic. He dictates the pace of rounds very well, and I saw that in the last fight against Dimitri Okucha, where there were some rounds where not much was happening, and then Marco HUCK would sort of suddenly come on strong with like a 5-punch combination and nick the round. HUCK has got a very good sense of knowing when to throw shots and knowing when to put pedal to the metal, and that's something not all fighters can do. He's very good at that. HUCK he's a veteran, and he's not as bad as he looks. Sometimes when you watch him fight, you do think to yourself, well, this guy, he's very beatable, and he is better than he looks. But he obviously has his flaws. He does leave himself open. when he throws shots, he sometimes throws himself off balance. He's open for those counters, and he does get hit quite a bit. But he has got a good chin, but he does get hit quite a bit, and you can't rely on that, as we saw against Glowacki. And I do think MAIRIS BRIEDIS has things that can really sort of take advantage of Marco Huck's defense or lack of defense. MAIRIS BRIEDIS, to me, he's at his most effective when he fights on the back foot, when he's counter-punching. He can pick up he's very good with his right hand. He can use that right hand down the pipe to counter his opponents. He's got a very nice uppercut as well, which I saw in the Duradola fight, and also obviously most notably against Manuel Charr when he knocked him out with a uppercut on the back foot, which was really impressive. To me, Briedis is a boxer, but he can sort of fight on the inside too very well. So Briedis is quite well rounded. He's more skilled than Marco Huck. He's more versatile. He can fight on the inside. He can fight on the outside, like we saw against Manuel Charr. You know, he was fighting on the inside quite a bit against Duradola. So, to me, Briedis is quite a versatile fighter, and he does definitely have the tools to really sort of counter Marco Huck. He's got the tools to definitely to get some work done against Marco Huck. It's whether he can bridge that gap in experience and whether he can make this jump to world level, because he's not fought at that level. Duradola's a good fringe level cruiserweight. He's a tough guy, but he's not world level. He's in the top 20, but maybe sort of in the 15 to 20 area. He also beat Manuel Charr at heavyweight. Again, that's a good win, but Manuel Charr is not a top 20 heavyweight. So MAIRIS BRIEDIS has never fought anybody as good as Marco Huck. So you've got to ask yourself a question: how is he going to bridge that gap, and is he good enough to do it? Do I think he's good enough to do it? I think he is. In terms of skills anyway, I think he's good enough to beat Marco Huck. I think the opportunities are going to be there to counter, and my only concern is, you know, I'm not sure how durable is MAIRIS BRIEDIS, because Briedis against Duradola was getting hit. He wasn't getting hurt, but he was getting hit. And, you know, Marco Huck can hit quite a bit. And if Marco Huck has sort of prolonged periods of success where he sort of swarms Briedis and gets him up against the ropes and pushes him back, how is Briedis going to deal with that against a guy who's a seasoned championship rounds veteran? You know, how is he going to deal with that in sort of the latter parts of the fight? I'm not sure. That's the only thing I'm sort of hesitant about picking on this fight, is Briedis' lack of experience and how he deals with a opponent in the second half of a fight who's world class and who's, you know, an elite level fighter. I'm not sure how he's going to deal with that, because he's not done it before. But obviously that doesn't mean he can't do it. Everybody has to do it for the first time, and maybe this is just a passing of a torch, and that's been something that the cruiserweight division's been actually going through. We obviously saw Denis Lebedev lose to Murat Gassiev, which I picked to happen as well. I felt Gassiev was going to win that fight, and I expect, although I'm not 100% confident in this pick, I expect Briedis to beat Marco Huck, and maybe by late stoppage, maybe by points, I'm not sure yet, but I do expect Briedis to sort of sneak it out. And this is a bit of a passing of a torch. We saw Marco Huck lose to Glowacki. He has come back quite impressively by beating Ola Afolabi and Dmitry Kucha. But, you know, this is a passing of a torch maybe, you know. Just like Lebedev when he lost to Gassiev, I can see similar happening here, you know. But yeah, I expect Briedis to win, but I'm not confident in that pick. And that's why I think it's a good fight. I'm not going to be able to watch this fight on the day, but I'll watch this fight on a Sunday. But yeah, looking forward to this one. I think this is a fight that's not been talked about enough. And listen, Box Nation have picked this up, but the US networks really need to start looking at the cruiserweight division in more depth. Because to me, in terms of pure entertainment, it's one of the best divisions in boxing. When I think about all the cruiserweight fights in recent years that have delivered, when I compare it to other divisions, I can't think of another division that sort of consistently churns out quality fights like the cruiserweight division. You know, we've had multiple fights in the recent years. HUCK versus Glowacki, Lebedev versus Gassiev, you know, Lebedev versus Marco Huck, Unie Dorticos versus Yuri Kalenga, Bellew versus Makabu. You know, we've had some great nights at cruiserweight, you know, and people don't really give this division enough sort of airtime. Hook versus Firat Arslan was a great fight. Hook versus Ola Afolabi, a lot of those fights were really, really good. You know, I mean, Steve Cunningham versus Glowacki, that was a good fight. Krzysztof Włodarczyk versus Rakim Shakayev, that was a great fight. I mean, you know, all these fights have happened in recent years, in the last sort of 3 or 4 years. And in comparison to other divisions, I just think the cruiserweight division consistently delivers top-class fights. But yeah, enough of that. I really like Briedis versus Huck. I think it's a good fight, and it's a fitting way to fight for a vacant world title. A lot of times we see a vacant world title where one guy who's world class fights for it against a guy who's sort of not that great. But you know, now we've got two top 10 guys going at it for a vacant title, and that's how every vacant title should be contested. But yeah, tell me what you guys think of this fight. Peace.